to another edition of Mending the Fence. I am your host on the right, Sam Stroud. Unfortunately, this week, Emma is sick and a little behind on homework. But don't worry, at the Trop, there are many, many liberals, so we just got the next guy up. Scott, how are you?
I'm great, man. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, they're good to have you. I'm wearing a red and blue shirt to symbolize my bipartisanship. Say that 5 times. No, I'm just kidding. I had to give a speech today. So this week, last week, I would say, we were going to talk about college censorship on campus, but our Kavanaugh discussion went way over, so I just said bump it, and we'll go to this week. And so here we are, and what do you think, Scott, about, last week I wrote my column that, Southern Miss replacing the Ole Miss Rebel with the Land Shark, and California State getting rid of Prospector Pete, and, Stanford renaming some buildings. I have an issue with this, I'm sure you could guess. So I think that, personally, these are very negative moves for college students because if you just remove things that are offensive, you don't make people question why they're offended or why they're against that certain thing in the first place. And you also teach them that if you scream and whine loud enough, people will just do what you want. I think those are very negative lessons to learn. Some people are against this whole renaming mascots and renaming buildings, but they'll still say, well, the Ole Miss thing's justified. But I ask why. If you just remove anything that makes you uncomfortable instead of analyzing why it's uncomfortable or analyzing whether or not it actually should make you uncomfortable, I think you do a disservice to college students. I think you do a disservice to the country. Instead of looking at why Southerners moved away from the Union other than slavery, which was obviously a big issue, but there was more to that than just that. It was you had a two-tier country where neither side listened to each other or they viewed each other as sort of the enemy. Sound familiar? And so when you just kind of go over that and just say, oh, it's slavery and this is racist, so let's get rid of it, I think you lose some of the lessons that history has to teach us.
Okay. This reminds me of, it seems like America for 150 years or so some Americans cannot get past the Confederacy. They take a lot of pride in it, as they wear it as a badge of honor. And if you look at any other country who does this, like who sticks with a time and place and an era that is so dark in a nation's history, like it's apples and oranges maybe, but not Nazi Germany. Most people there don't wear the Nazi swastika as a badge of honor. Today in America, I can go back to my hometown of Marbury and there's Confederate flags everywhere. So the Civil War, darkest time in our history, nation was divided, vulnerable. Some people like to hold on to that. And it goes back to today. You still have Confederate symbols. You still have symbols like the Rebel. Well, I know the Ole Miss Rebel wasn't necessarily named after the Confederates like the rebels, but it's just the idea that those things are still here, things we still take pride in being rebels when that 1860s or a dark time in our period, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, like you said, it was a dark time and we were divided, but if you get rid of him, no one's going to ask why it was dark and why it was divided. Yes, and there was I think it was a professor from Texas who said one time, we shouldn't choose which history to remember, but we should choose which history to celebrate. And some people are celebrating this history of, being rebellious against the Union. And I know some people say that the Civil War wasn't about slavery. If you read the letters of secession, especially like, for example, Mississippi, it was about slavery. And I think there's a difference between remembering history and also difference between remembering history and celebrating it. Sure, but there are always people who will tell you that, and I'm just playing devil's advocate because I don't necessarily agree with this, but there are always people on the right who will tell you that it's more about people being prideful about their ancestors just standing up for what they believed in and what they thought was right, even though it clearly isn't by our moral standards today. It was much less clear back then. It was just people doing what they thought was right, and a lot of them didn't have any real malice behind it. They were just fighting for their way of life. And so when we just say that, you're wrong to celebrate that, I think it's kind of a little short-sighted because some people don't see it as as their ancestors for like fighting for slavery. They see it as standing up for what they believed in, and they're prideful of that. Mm-hmm. That's how my dad views it.
Yeah, and I know of at least one ancestor that fought in a civil war for the Confederacy, and I'm proud of him for standing up, joining the fight for what he believed in. But I don't agree with the fight. I don't agree with what he believed in.
Right. But I don't think anyone who has the Confederate flag in today's society is saying that they want blacks back in slavery.
Oh, go back to my hometown. I think there's a vast majority that do take pride in it because of what you said. They're proud of their ancestors for standing up what they believe in. But I do think I think there's a small portion of people that still think like they're back in the 1860s and still think that like the alt-right people in the alt-right are wackos. They think that they're a superior being.
Sure, like all 20 of those guys. I mean, the Unite the Right rally had literally 20 people at it.
Yeah.
Like, neo-Nazi, white nationalist, whatever you want to call it, it's on the decline despite what a lot of people seem to think. And a large majority of the people who have Confederate flags don't see themselves as white nationalists and don't believe in what white nationalism advocates. So, again, I think it's nearsighted to just say we're going to ban all these things just because there are 10, 20 people who want slavery back. Yeah. Like, that's kind of ridiculous. And I think it's really bad on college campuses because we've got a lot of impressionable minds who think that now banning things that, make them upset is just an okay thing in life. And you can't have, young adults thinking that they're going to be able to just get rid of anything that makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up an example I just thought of from last year. There was a group of people in my one of my political science classes who tried to change the name of George Wallace Drive out in front of the university, and they wanted to change it to something else. And there's a lot of pushback from locals saying, they just entitled kids want to change everything they don't understand or something like that. It's not hard to take about 10 minutes to Google George Wallace and see how much of a stain he is on Alabama. If I'm not mistaken, the reason why it's named after him is because he did a lot for the university, and I understand that. However, it's hard to be okay with the street out there being named George Wallace, even though we're supposed to be Alabama's international university, and George Wallace was clearly against diversity back in his day. I know towards the latter years of his life he changed, but...
Well, I don't know if you could say he changed. I mean, once African Americans get to vote, you're going to become pretty anti-racist really quickly. Yeah. But, I mean, you've already said it. He contributed to our university, and I don't think the street being named after him is to pay homage to, his attempts to stop desegregation. I think it's an attempt to remember him for the contribution to our university, and I don't see why now he has to be taken, why his name has to be removed from the street. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. You have people who are saying this is offensive and we need to get rid of it. It doesn't represent us. And then people can say, well, here's why here's some good things he did, blah, blah, blah. So now you keep him in, you keep his name on the street, and he becomes part of discussion. So there's good and bad. And I think that if you just get rid of it, you will, you get rid of both sides. You get rid of the racist implications, but you also get rid of the positive implications that everything comes with.
Yeah, and once again, to me, it's like we have George Wallace on that street out there. Are we acting like, does he still represent us? Are we still, we can remember George Wallace in the textbooks without having his name commemoration on the street name, I feel like.
No, see, that's the thing about all this debate. No one is defending the people who are trying to be kind of vaporized, to use an Orwellian term from history.
Yeah.
They're just saying that, hey, you can't just get rid of people that make you uncomfortable because then you lose track of history and you lose sight of what made us the way we are today. Yeah. So, that's my big thing about all this stuff. And the same with, California State banning Prospector Peak because, 49ers and all that fun stuff with Native Americans. I mean, you're gonna lose track of how. I mean, that's really related to America's rise to power is their expansion west and all the new territory. And when you just get rid of stuff that offends you, you don't take the good with the bad because sure, Native Americans were very poorly mistreated. But America got a lot of resources and a lot of wealth and a lot of their power from Western expansion. So if you just get rid of that, it just kind of you leave the stigma of, oh, well, America's mistreating Native Americans. But you don't mention the fact that, as a nation, the country grew and progressed socially and economically because of the Western expansion.
Yeah.
And so when you just get rid of stuff like that, you only take the bad and you don't have the good.
Yeah, I'm going to speak candidly here. As a white man.
Oh boy, race card.
When I see George Wallace, it'll be easier for any black student here at Troy University. They probably have grandparents who were involved in the civil rights movement in some capacity. Maybe they were protesting, and they were, they had a really powerful water hose sprayed on them by a police officer. Whenever they see the name George Wallace, it's gonna really resonate with them. It's gonna, it's probably gonna make them more angry than it would me, because they have a more personal connection to it. And if a black student, like, I think one of the leaders of the movement last year was a black student, it's a million times more easier for him to, I guess I'm not gonna say be offended. That's not a
triggered.
That's not
triggered, I think, is the word
maybe
you're looking for.
He's gonna be easier for them to resonate with changing the name than me, because I completely understand why they want to, and I want to help that cause.
Sure. But, I mean, that all goes back to, well, these people feel this way, so we should just do whatever makes them feel better. And that's not a good approach to have in society. It's not a good policy position, and it's not a good way to make them learn. If you want people to, understand history, you can't just get rid of things because they don't like it. And for those certain students who I understand completely how they would feel, I think you do disservice to them, because you don't have his impact, you don't have his legacy visible anymore. He's just a big bad man in a book. Yeah. And you lose sight of the roots of his legacy, and he just becomes almost a fictional villain if you just put him in a textbook. Whereas if you have him in real life, it comes as a discussion about the good things he did and the bad things he did, yeah. And he just becomes villainized in some history textbook.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest reason to keep him, and I would say that about almost anyone. I mean, I can't think of a single college campus that I think has justifiably banned something. I think that a lot of it is just a lot of people on the far left are not comfortable with things they don't agree with, and colleges most of them are run by leftists, so it's all one big bubble, and there's no pushback whenever someone says get rid of this, so they just get rid of it. And
well, Auburn University banned hard liquor, so at its fraternities.
I was referring to statues and buildings and names, but Auburn can do whatever Auburn wants. I don't go there, and thank God for it every day. Now, I read this second topic. I didn't know we were going to talk about other than college campuses, so I go to Politico usually because they have just headlines, and I read whatever they have and see if I want to comment on it. And I came across an article that made me actually kind of angry. Because, all the time I hear Democrats aren't racist, Democrats aren't sexist. It's Republicans that are the bigots and the homophobes and the racists, and the Republicans hate women. I come across an article that says, for female Republicans, party loyalty trumps #MeToo. And then the article proceeds to just go about saying that, it's such a shame that women just don't blindly believe other women. Here's an excerpt. Democrat women say it's unimaginable that any female lawmaker would not believe someone of their own gender who risked upending their lives to come forward or at least call for an investigation of the allegation. Representative Jackie Spear, Democrat California, argued in an interview that 93 and 97% of women who come forward with claims are telling the truth. If Collins and Murkowski, who are two female GOP senators who are kind of going back and forth on whether or not to confirm Kavanaugh, end up siding with their party on Kavanaugh's nomination, female Democrats say they would risk their reputation with women of all stripes. What? Can you not, if you look at something and say, okay, based on the facts, I don't agree with you, you risk your reputation with women of all stripes. So you lose credibility with 51% of the country if you look at an accuser and say the facts don't support your statements, ergo, I do not believe you, and I will side with due process. Since you can't prove it, Kavanaugh's innocent. If you do that, then somehow you are betraying women. And this is what gets me, is all this Democrats love to box people in. Women have to support women, blacks support blacks, Hispanics support Hispanics. But the only way they can do that is through liberal policies. And whenever a woman doesn't go with their policy, they get shammed like this, where people just go, oh, well, you're going to ruin your reputation with women. Oh, you're an Uncle Tom. Stuff like that. I'm referring to African Americans, not women.
Yeah.
And the article goes on to say that several Republican women have concerns about men being smeared by false accusations, and some of them have viewed Kavanaugh's accusers skeptically because of their 11th hour timing. They want evidence. Like, this is some kind of awful thing that people are demanding proof for an accusation that could ruin a man's life. And I cannot understand why in the 21st century, when everyone is so anti-racist, anti-bigot, anti-sexist. We have people like these Democrat congressmen and people like Cicely Richards who say there's a special place in hell for women who don't support women. How that is not considered sexism when if you go against what your gender or race is supposed to think, you get made fun of immediately. And I think this is just a crying shame that no one will call this out, because to me this seems like cut and dry sexism.
I feel like, okay, speaking as someone who generally is liberal.
Very generally.
Yes.
Very generally.
What I think they're doing is political opportunism. Maybe what they're saying, like Representative Spears, what she was saying, what, Kirsten Gillibrand has said, what they're saying, maybe they do believe it in their hearts. Maybe they really do believe it. But at least when they're speaking to the media about all this, saying that there's a special place in hell for women who don't vote for women, I feel like it's more so trying to take advantage of a political opportunity instead of that's what's coming from their hearts. I'm obviously no expert. I don't know these people. I'm just a college kid, not an expert, but I feel like I've seen enough House of Cards, scandal, etc.
Look, if Ocasio-Cortez can sit in Congress, we can say whatever we want. We're fine.
Geez.
Qualifications clearly not important. Anyway, continue.
Well, I was just saying, I do think it's more opportunism than it is they actually believe it in their hearts. And I do think what the Democrats have been doing, Republicans have been doing, this whole Kavanaugh, everything has been bad for America.
Oh yeah,
as a
definitely.
whole.
Of course.
But I think it's more political opportunism than it is they actually believe in their hearts, to be honest.
Okay, now you could, if you're gonna kind of say that, then I would love to know why you think Trump is racist and why that excuse cannot be used for anything he says. If everyone just says, "Oh, he's just being politically opportune," I think that's a very dangerous excuse to use, because then you can excuse anything, and it becomes very partisan very quickly on who's being politically opportunistic and who's just being a sexist or a racist.
Because for Trump, it goes back way longer than it has for him being a politician. He started his campaign June 2015, I believe, but I've written an article about this for the trial, the one that actually, I got some hate mail for it. I'll have to show you one day.
Fun.
But I can't remember the exact year, maybe 1973, Trump and his father's one of the real estate companies, was sued by, of all people, the Nixon administration for being discriminatory against black people, not letting them in their apartments. And Trump did not win that lawsuit. Trump loves to claim he wins stuff when he doesn't. I don't know. But going from the 70s all the way up until today, okay, I don't know. Obviously, once again, I don't know Trump. It'd be easier to pinpoint this if I could actually speak to him, if I can get to know him. But from what I've seen, I think Trump he's not a racist per se. I'll say he's more so of a narcissist, and as in he only looks out for himself ever.
That's very true.
Yes.
But I mean, when people say, "Oh, we call Mexicans rapists and all that stuff," first of all, he called the illegal immigrants rapists and murderers. But that's neither here nor there. My point is that you can just say he's being politically opportunistic because he's exploiting an angry base who's upset over immigration.
Yes.
So for people to say in this administration being run by some racist narcissist, I think the narcissist part's very correct. But for people to just call him racist, if you're gonna, because I mean, I'm not trying to attack you personally here, but I mean, Democrats will defend stuff like that comment, but then call Trump a racist, and I think that it's very hypocritical for people to say, "Oh, this person's being opportunistic, but this person actually means what they say."
Yes. Does Trump appealing to racists make him racist? That's not for me to answer. I don't know. I cannot say with confidence what that answer is, but you can make an argument, I believe.
Anyway, that was a little side tangent thing. I wanted to get you right there with that. Anyway, the third quote is, "It would really undermine, if not destroy, their credibility." This is Collins and Murkowski, on a whole host of issues where they've lifted up women. Representative Pramila Jayapal,
She from Washington?
Yes.
Okay.
Said of the prospect of Collins and Murkowski backing Kavanaugh, "It would undermine their credibility if they let facts decide how they make a decision on," not to be repetitive, "how they decide on whether or not they're going to vote for Kavanaugh or not. That would ruin their credibility." Can you explain this to me, how looking at facts ruins your credibility?
Looking at, okay, once again, opportunism going at with a strong statement, talking about their whole credibility.
They are actually stopping and thinking about this, is apparently giving women nightmares across the country, according to what these people are saying.
I mean, it's good. It's good that they're taking time to look at this, and I feel like, we need longer than maybe a little bit off topic. Maybe we need more than a week for this FBI investigation if we're really going to be thorough with this and get all the facts.
The India Hill one was 3 days, so. And Emma last week, I know y'all aren't the same person, but Emma last week said it wouldn't take very long. That's why we should have it. But now that we have it, everyone's saying, we need to make it past a week. So the goalposts keep shifting. But that's neither here nor there. Okay, I want you to swap out everything with the word women and she with he. You tell me how it doesn't sound sexist. If you said it would really undermine if not destroy their credibility in a whole host of issues, they've lifted up men, said the prospect of Collins and Murkowski back in Kavanaugh. I don't know how a man could listen to Kavanaugh's testimony and not confirm her, but I worry. Does that not just ring of sexism right there if you swap out the gender pronouns and say, it's a man, we have to believe him? Whereas if it's a woman, we have to believe her.
At face value, yes, but I think my gut instinct, you have to look at this with a little more context. The United States government for 240 years has been white male the entire time. Females are a majority in this country. There's more females than males, but they're vastly underrepresented in Congress. So at face value, that would be sexist. But I think when you give them more context, maybe it makes more sense.
I love this new idea that, racism and sexism is all about context. It's not dictionary definition anymore. It's all about who has power and who doesn't. And that, I don't know, I don't buy that argument at all. But
human civilizations since the beginning of time have always been about power.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying that stuff like gender.
No, so you're right. Power. Power.
Okay. But this just kind of, I don't know, I want to kind of go to the next example I've got. This is just kind of me saying that this is sexism, I think, on the left, and I'm going to go now where it's racist on the left for the same issue. So last year we had a Hispanic caucus who has had no Republicans since 1990. There was, I don't know if you heard about this last year, but there was talk about them letting in a Republican named Carlos Curbelo. And pretty much what they said was that after they rejected him, they said that the caucus isn't just an organization for Hispanics. It is a caucus that represents certain values. This vote reflects the position of many of our members and that Representative Curbelo and his record are not consistent with those values. When pressed for why he isn't consistent with those values, they said the group's decision was based on the DREAM Act and his support for repealing of Obamacare and support for the GOP tax bill. I get it that he's not liberal, and I get that a lot of the Hispanics are liberal, but the caucus's values, or the caucus's mission, is to just help Hispanics. I don't see why adding a conservative viewpoint would say that you now undermine helping Hispanics. And this is what I'm talking about for blacks as well, is, all these groups saying, we're going to help people, but we're going to exclude conservatives because they're not really going to help us. Like that, you're excluding an entire strategy of helping people. And you're going with your single viewpoint, and anyone who doesn't match that viewpoint isn't really going to help you out and isn't really a Hispanic or isn't really trying to help the Hispanic community. And this just seems like racism to me because you have Kanye West being called Uncle Tom by a lot of people who say they're not racist and sexist, and a lot of people who call Trump a racist because all he's saying is that, hey, I support Donald Trump. That makes him an Uncle Tom. Again, I don't know how in the 21st century, when everyone's so anti-sexist and so anti-racist, that this kind of stuff still happens, where conservatives and minorities who happen to be conservatives are ostracized and excluded from minority groups. And I don't see how anyone on the left who is always talking about how they don't judge people by race or gender is okay with this. I mean, I do know why, because they don't judge by race or gender, but they do judge by ideological differences. I mean, that's the one thing consistent with the left, I would say, is that they're very ideologically solid. There's no diversity. And if there is diversity, stuff like this, where you have one Hispanic out of like 30 who say, hey, I'm actually a Republican, then they're going to just get excluded. They're not going to be allowed into the club because they're not really going to help Hispanics. They're just here to help the GOP. I mean, that's kind of stuff that's ridiculous, and it's all over the place in the Democrat Party, and I think it's a travesty.
Oddly enough, I agree. Like, I do think that they should let in any caucus, the Black caucus, the Hispanic caucus, should let in dissenting viewpoints, such as conservative viewpoints, into the caucuses, just so they can have a better diversity of thoughts. So I actually agree with you on this one.
That's good. So do you think it's okay to call Kanye West an Uncle Tom, as Snoop Dogg did?
You know, earlier saying don't know what Donald Trump's thinking. Kanye West is even harder to really see what he's thinking.
Sure.
Okay, Kanye. I'm not going to say he's an Uncle Tom. I do the thing that he's misinformed. He's impulsive with his tweets. Sound familiar, Donald Trump. But I'm going to bring up a tweet from, it was Chris Evans, and I, very much agree with this.
What a politically straight man Chris Evans is. I always agree with Chris Evans. I'm just kidding. I don't.
So, I'll say sarcasm or no?
Yeah, that is extremely sarcastic.
But Kanye West, this is first. I'll read the Kanye tweet. Okay. Kanye said, he's wearing a "Make America Great Again" hat, and he said, "This represents good in America becoming whole again. We will no longer outsource to other countries. We will build factories here in America and create jobs. We will provide jobs for all those who are free from prisons as we abolish the 13th Amendment. Message sent with love." Chris Evans says, "There's nothing more maddening than debating someone who doesn't know history, doesn't read books, and frames their myopia as virtue. The level of unapologetic conjecture I've encountered lately isn't just frustrating, it's retrogressive, unprecedented, and absolutely terrifying." Okay. Kanye said we should abolish the 13th Amendment. Wow. Why did he say that? He said the 13th Amendment freed slaves, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
But, later he corrected himself. Thankfully, he corrected himself because the 13th Amendment, it says slavery is illegal unless you have committed a crime. So at first, if Kanye said we should abolish the 13th Amendment and didn't say anything after that, okay, yes, fine, call him Uncle Tom. But when Kanye had to correct himself and say, let's amend the 13th Amendment, I'm not sure this is what he was trying to get at.
I mean, clearly Kanye heard that last fact and didn't realize what the rest of the amendment was about.
Yeah, and also to make an amendment to an amendment, it's not possible nowadays.
No, you are pretty close to the 4 states, though. Those Republican state governorships just keep growing.
You're not wrong. But anyway, I don't know if this was what Kanye was getting at, but if he means that, nowadays black people are still, I guess, enslaved as in mass incarceration in something like that, then I can get on board. Yeah, maybe with that. But I think he made a major mistake when he said, let's abolish the 13th Amendment. And I gotta say, Kanye West is one of my favorite rappers. I love him.
I hate rap. Never listen to it.
Okay, I love Kanye, but this is pushing it for me. I love Kanye. I'm probably not going to stop listening to his music, but him as a person, wow, has he gone off the rails the past few years.
Okay. So your argument is that he's uninformed. Is that what you're basically trying to say? He's got a loud mouth with no brain.
I think he has a loud mouth, and he forgets to provide context, just like he said with the 13th Amendment.
Does that make him a race traitor?
A race baiter?
A race traitor. Is he betraying his race as a black man?
I think you can make an argument.
Oh God. So I'll go to a more sensible person. Do you ever heard of Candace Owen? She works at Turning Point USA. She's
Kanye
a black
tweets
female.
about her sometimes.
Yes. She's been called a race traitor as well. And anyone who is a conservative who happens to be black is a race traitor in media, in the culture. And so, I mean, why would you say that you can make an argument for that? Because they're supporting conservative policies, and is that what you're saying? Like anyone who supports policies that are not from the left you can make an argument are race traitors?
No, I'm saying, okay, well, I'm going to go back to something Kanye said a few months ago that I can see. He said something about all black people don't have to be Democrat. That's true. Yeah, that's fine. You can be anything you want. Mm-hmm. But I think it's hard for anybody to say that they are with one party true and through all the way. And if you are...
90% of African Americans vote for Democrats.
Yes,
so.
And I think that...
At least.
I do... Okay, let's take, for instance, gerrymandering, okay?
Sure.
Gerrymandering. There was a court that ruled that the state of North Carolina, targeted black people with precision in gerrymandering, and a court struck down their map. That is why, Republican leaders in North Carolina I don't know how you can be a Republican. I don't know how you can be a black and Republican in North Carolina in that instance.
Okay.
Like, do that? Like, I'm genuinely curious. Do they support
Okay.
that? I do think there are some instances like gerrymandering where you have. I do question like, if you are a black and Republican, why are you supporting this? If like, I'm curious.
No, you shouldn't support that. But do black Democrats in Chicago, where the murder rate and it's most African Americans being killed, and it's all by liberal policies that run that city in San Francisco, why would you vote for that party that you voted for consistently for 50 years, and you live, and not to sound too much like Trump here, but you live in a really crappy place that's run by Democrats, and it's crappy because of Democrat laws, and you live in places where Democrats support policies that disarm law-abiding citizens and just put guns in the hands of criminals, and you get shot, or some people get shot because of that. How can you vote Democrat? Like that's what I'm saying is there are policies on both sides that don't help African Americans, so you can't point to a single state government making a bad policy saying, oh, well, because you're a Republican general, then you might be a race traitor. So I don't know if that's a valid argument because you can't isolate certain instances where policies have negatively affected a minority and say, well, because of that, you shouldn't be a Republican, or it could be, or because of that, it's feasible to say that you're betraying your race because you're a Republican. There are plenty of policies that don't help African Americans on the Democrat side, and they'll still vote for them. So just to point out that the North Carolina state party targeted African Americans and say, well, because of that, Kanye West can't be a Republican, or because of that. And he's not. I hate it when people say that Kanye West is some kind of like thought leader. He's not. He's just an uninformed guy who has found a niche and he's sticking with it, I think. But people like Candace Owens, you can't just say that because of certain acts by the Republican Party that now any black person who's a Republican is a race traitor. Would you say that any white liberal is a race traitor? Whether or not you think it's helping the majority of Americans, you can admit that Republicans have helped white people.
Yes.
True. Okay. So now, is a white person who votes for a Democrat now a race traitor?
No.
Okay. Then why is voting against a party that's helping you, not betraying your race, but voting with a party that has targeted you in small, isolated instances in certain areas, why does that make you a race traitor?
When you put it like that, it does not.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I had for today. I just want to go on that little spiel about identity politics because a lot of people on the left call people on the right, racists and bigots and stuff like that. And I just see stuff like this where, women are, attacked for not even for sure being Republican, like acting in a Republican fashion, but just looking at facts, and they get ridiculed for that. And they're told that, oh, your credibility is going to go down if you judge a situation by the facts. And then you have Hispanics who aren't allowed to join caucuses because of their certain positions on certain legislative acts. I don't see how that's not considered sexist and racist. And I think it's really, hurtful to this country to just say that, all minorities need to support this certain person or this certain party because this party will help them. Well, what if it doesn't? What if they don't agree with that? What if they don't agree with the policies that the Democrat Party is putting forward? Well, then, they're betraying their race. It's fine. They're just a race traitor, and don't be friends with them. That's the message that I'm seeing that's thrown out. By the way, Kanye West is treated, and by the way, Candace Owens is treated, and by the way, Hispanic Republicans are treated. And I don't see how people always talk about, we got to, bridge the gap between the parties and two sides of the country. Well, you're not going to do that if you keep throwing out anyone who says the opposite opinion of yours on social media or on a cultural level like Kanye West. You're not going to... People who say they want to bridge the gap are the same people who are going to call Candace Owens and Kanye West Uncle Toms, and the same people who are going to say that Republicans can't be in Hispanic caucuses because they support Republican legislation. You can't bridge the gap if that's all you're going to do. So, that's all I had to say for this week. Normally we have a partisan part. Emma's not here, but do you have... It's the left's turn, so you have 2 minutes to say anything you want if you want to.
All right. I'll talk about Kavanaugh for a second.
Okay, 2 minutes starting now.
All right. So today in one of my political science classes, we were talking about Kavanaugh, talking about the hearings, and there were some people in there who are okay. Like, they said they believe Dr. Ford, and they still believe that Kavanaugh should be confirmed. Okay, this is me. I was no on Kavanaugh, not because of the sexual assault, but before this. His views on the executive branch and executive power, too extreme for me. Also, his views on cutting regulation, especially the executive power, too much for me. But if Kavanaugh did this, and you think that he should still be confirmed, okay, let's go back. He shouldn't be ousted for the sexual assault. He should be ousted. His nomination should be withdrawn because of perjury. Something that, there's multiple accusations of perjury now, but if the FBI finds that indeed he did this, then that's another perjury just added to the list.
Is that it?
Yeah.
All right. That is our new record. 1 minute, 14 seconds. It's pretty good. All right. Well, I promised I'd get the Instagram page going, but that didn't happen this week. I got a lot of busy things going on. Scott, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you were able to fill in on such short notice. Thank you hopefully it won't be, a midnight text message next time, but I had to play the hand I was dealt. So I guess that wraps it up for this week, everyone. Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Still trying to get to Blueberry. And hopefully Emma will be back next week. If not, Scott will probably be here again. And that's about it for this week, everyone. So we'll see you next Wednesday.